Welcome back to Dr. Beth DuPree YouTube channel. And I'm really excited about this segment, and I think you're going to love it because this isn't a segment that just pertains to breast cancer survivorship. This is a segment that I believe if everyone learns what we're going to talk about, and it's really about healing, then there's no need for cancer and disease because we figure it out without the really tough journey. And if I had to title this, I would call it From Surviving to Thriving, because in Western medicine, we tend to look at breast cancer in terms of surviving, like how long you live after a diagnosis of breast cancer. And to me, it's not about how long you live after a diagnosis of breast cancer, it's how you live your best life after a diagnosis of breast cancer. So my term would be From Surviving to Thriving. And the cool part is you're going to get to see another video, hopefully in April, because I'm going to give this talk to a group of young breast cancer surgeons next week in Maryland when the Healing Consciousness Foundation is putting on a really amazing event called the Breast Cancer Survivorship Experience, where we invite young breast surgical oncologists, nurse navigators, nurse practitioners who work in the industry to come for a 3-day intensive about every aspect of breast cancer care that I'm not going to say it's overlooked by Western medical training, because they're actually metrics that are meant to be met during a breast surgical oncology fellowship, but nobody's really teaching it. And so we think that this is such an important part of breast cancer survivorship that we put together a course, and I believe this is our 6th course that we're doing through the Healing Consciousness Foundation. My co-facilitator or co-director is Dr. William Scarlett, who is an amazing breast cancer surgeon. He's a breast cancer reconstructive surgeon, I'll say, but his passion is really about healing. So I invited Deb back again because Deb, on a previous episode, you learned about her journey through the treatment of her breast cancer. And now I'm going to talk about how we in Sedona did our very first, what I call Thrivers Retreat in April of 2019. And I actually did the first retreat in Pennsylvania back in 2010. And you might wonder, why do you have to do a retreat? Like, you go through the treatment, you get surgery, chemo, radiation, you take your pills. Why is there a need to look into survivorship? So Deb, talk to me about, after your cancer treatment was done, what was offered to you through your cancer center as far as survivorship?
Nothing. They do have a survivorship program, but it's...
The care plan?
Correct, and a care plan. But in reality, there was absolutely nothing. And so I felt a little bit like I was dropped off the edge of a cliff. I was really tired. And I was like, okay, what do I do now? I know I'm cured, in essence, but I didn't feel healed.
Did you have fear?
I had a tremendous amount of fear. I was really afraid I would never be able to get out of bed again and just live my life and be able to do things that people normally do. I was extraordinarily fatigued.
Did you think about cancer coming back at all?
Not that so much. I mean, it's always in the back of your head a little bit, but that was a lesser of a concern. What for me was more like, what now? What's my purpose? Why am I here? Why was I saved? Where am I going?
And how do you live your best life?
Exactly.
So I learned a long time ago from my patients that have been my greatest teachers that I can do a great operation. I can give them a beautiful scar. They can look in the mirror and not even see that they had breast cancer. But what hangs in the back of their head is the fear of recurrence, the fear of not being completely present where they are because they're thinking of other things. And I've always said to the medical device companies I work with that if I could cut out the fear when I cut out the cancer, I'd be the very best surgeon ever. And so I had to come up with ways of cutting out fear. And hence the Healing Consciousness Foundation came to fruition because I knew that the healing work, the deep spiritual work, the emotional letting go of things, the path forward to a healthier life with nutrition and diet and exercise, whole mind, body, spirit, I couldn't do it all myself. So my sister Ann, who is an amazing human being, helped me to put together the foundation. And as we developed the foundation and we developed the healing services, we decided in 2010 that by bringing together all of these healing modalities and bringing women together who've gone through breast cancer, that level of connectedness is amazing. So my sister Sue, an Australian amazing healer, clinical social psychologist, she and one of her colleagues, Medita, came to the US and we put together a 3-day retreat, which was extraordinary. Some women who had had cancer 20 years ago and women who were just diagnosed, young women who were mothers of infants and children, and women who were grandmothers. And what we realized was that the women that were 20 some years out of their diagnosis still had never healed from their cancer. And that these other women who didn't have their hair and were just coming over the side of, chemo and surgery. I mean, one woman there even had drains in. We brought these women together, and during the course of yoga and breathing and meditation and mindfulness and journeying and walking the land, that retreat was something that was so extraordinary that we needed to continue to replicate it over and over and over again, which we do. And so in the spring of 2019, I had the great fortune of working through the Northern Arizona Healthcare Foundation. They were phenomenal in believing in this vision that we brought 16 women together for a weekend at Mago in Sedona. So Deb kind of got pulled into the group because we had started a support group out here. So tell me why you signed up, what you thought, because a lot of women that come to these retreats are scared, but tell me why you did it, why you came.
So by that point in time, I'd come pretty far, and I'll just say my healing. But there was a little bit more that I needed to do, I'll just say, to fully thrive and become alive fully again. And thankfully, I'd found out about the retreat, and I really had no idea what would be involved. I didn't really know much about it, but I just felt so called to do it, and I trusted that it was going to be the next step and the right step to sort of, I'll just say, help complete my healing. I am a yoga teacher. I do meditation. I do kirtan. I have a very strong spiritual practice of a variety of different sorts. So, but I'd been doing all that alone, and I really hadn't been doing it with the support of a group. And through the process of the retreat, I formed a bond with all of the other women there. I can't even describe to you how quickly it occurred. It's rather surprising. It's a sisterhood that arose almost overnight because we'd all had a shared experience that's pretty profound.
One aspect in healthcare that's so overlooked is social isolation, or when you are alone through any process, no matter what kind of process it is in healthcare, whether it's cancer or heart disease or diabetes or anything, being socially isolated elevates the risk of recurrence or worsening disease. And when you are part of a group, in a collective group, and there was a great clinical study done with women that had breast cancer stage 2 and 3, and the link is at the bottom of the screen right now to this actual scientific data that showed that these women that did yoga, nutrition, and were connected socially in a group did better stage for stage, grade for grade. And that is unbelievable because you realize that you're not alone in this process. And Martha, who came from Phoenix, had cancer years earlier. And I met her serendipitously because I was teaching at Power Symposium in Phoenix and met her through Bill Scarlett, my plastic surgeon. An amazing, beautiful, fabulous woman who was just wrapped with fear. And watching her transformation, because I had met her and she wasn't my patient, but seeing her transformation through this process was so gratifying. And everybody, though, in the group. So what are the things in that retreat that were extraordinary for you?
Well, I just want to echo what you just said. I watched women who were hiding, fearful, shut down, absolutely come alive and thrive. It was truly miraculous.
You were a lot farther along in the process than a lot of the other women, though, because you had already done so many because you came from a spiritual side before your cancer. For some of these women, they didn't know what Reiki was. They didn't know what shamanic breath work was. They didn't know what yoga was. And so for them, we were eating a vegan diet, and that for some people, that was like GI transformational. But walking the land, walking the labyrinth, being together in nature, for some of them, this was like a completely different, we were way out of their comfort zone.
So the thing that I found most amazing about the retreat was the shamanic breathing, the breath work, because most people were terrified before that session and didn't even know if they were going to be even willing to do it.
And just so you know, Anahata Ananda is a phenomenal healer here in Sedona. Her web link is at the bottom of the page. And I encourage you, she did more in 1 day's worth of breath work than, for every single person told me they were a little scared going in because they didn't know what it was. But this is a process that takes you out of your stuff and moves you to a completely different level. So will you share with us what that experience was for you?
Absolutely. So I'd done a lot of breath work in my lifetime, but this was for me probably the best session I ever had. And I still had some residual fears that were sort of, I'll just say trapped kind of right here, just for whatever it's worth. And through the process of the breath work, which is really quite an intense breathing process, with her cueing, with the music, the drumming, the loving support of people who are with her, it was as though I shed the last remnants of that fear that was holding me back from living fully. And I came out of it feeling like $1 million. I don't even know how to say it. That's not even the right words. The words would be so elevated and so alive and so connected. It was quite extraordinary. Extraordinary.
So tell me about your relationship now with all of these women that were part of that group.
So one of the commitments that I made, because I'd gone through breast cancer treatment pretty much alone, I was in Seattle and I had some support, but not a tremendous amount. One of the commitments I made during the retreat was that I was going to form community. And in service to that, I said, so what I'm committing to is a year's worth of having all of you come over once a month and we're going to break bread together. We're going to have a meal and we're going to share.
And so how cool is it that we have a young thriver from Albuquerque who comes?
Yes.
Another young thriver from Lake Havasu that comes. Another two-time thriver from Phoenix who comes. Like, we're not talking about people who are driving, 30 minutes to get somewhere. We're talking about people who make a commitment to come together. And I love being with this group because I feel so empowered to continue this work, because I know that the work I do in surgery is amazing. I do surgery from my heart and soul. Like, I'm a good surgeon, and I don't want to quit my day job. But what I know is that the work that I do outside of the operating room, I believe, is more important than the work I do in the OR. What do you think about that comment?
I think you do absolutely amazing work in the OR, not only technically, but artistry-wise. Oh my goodness. But also the love and support you provide people through that process is extraordinary. But I also agree with you. The work that you're doing above and beyond that, the technical stuff beyond that, the spiritual things, that's really your work.
So do you think that every woman or man who goes through this cancer journey would benefit from a retreat?
Absolutely. I now have like 15 additional new best friends that now we've been together for more than, about a year now. I know that if I ever have a question, a problem, a fear, or anything, or need some support, they're at the other end of the phone, or they can come over, or vice versa. And we've become just incredibly close. And there's nothing like that, a support group like that, and a community. It's my tribe. It's my peeps. So
all my patients, when they're diagnosed, get a pink rose quartz heart. And what do I ask patients when I give them their heart, Deb?
Who's the most important person in the world?
It's very funny because most women, they know what they're supposed to say, but they can't even verbalize it because we're so used to putting everybody else's needs before our own. And so one of the things that I would love to do is to get anyone who's watching this who, if you've gone through breast cancer and you want to become part of our community and our tribe, so to speak, We are hosting the next Thrivers Retreat in the late summer of 2020. The information is available at bethdupree.com, at hcfsedona.org, and if you're on the East Coast, hcfbucks.org. We are running a retreat in August in the East Coast, later in August here in Sedona. And my intention for the future is that we do these 2 or 3 times a year. I am really thrilled because Sedona Rouge has decided to partner with us. I met the gentlemen, Ed and Daniel, who kind of run the joint during the Sedona Film Festival, and they are making such an amazing offer to us to be able to come there and use their facility. And I'm going to bring some healers in from Tucson, Tim Frank and Pam Lancaster, who I've been working with a lot of my personal spiritual transformation. Jody Hutchinson and my sister Sue Bachman are going to be coming from Australia and the East Coast. And so if this is something that resonates with you, please go to drbethdupree.com and click on the link that'll say the retreat, and you'll get information. And I hope to see you there. What do you say to someone thinking about this who might be a little scared? Because one of the things that I really want to do is get this word out. So we're actually contemplating doing a documentary about this next retreat. And it might seem kind of creepy or weird to have someone film what's happening, but my promise is that I will have a phenomenal videographer and editor, that if someone doesn't want their face in this or their name or anything, we will make sure that it's not connected. But I think this is a story that needs to be told. I think that this is, going to the film festival this year, as I'm watching documentaries, and I hosted a documentary called However Long, which was about metastatic breast cancer, and I cry every time I watch it. But it was about women living with stage 4 breast cancer and that transformation and how important that support group was. But I want to tell the story of from surviving to thriving. I want to tell the story of how women and men going through breast cancer can thrive through this process. So if I had said to you before we did that retreat that I wanted to film it, what would you say?
I would have said, if you gave me the option of photoshopping out or whatever certain elements of it, I would have said, okay, sure, yeah, let's do it.
What do you think about going back to our first group now? How many of those women do you think would tell their story on camera?
I think every single one of them would, and I think they would be honored to do so. Absolutely, no question asked.
And I have a little video clip which we're going to attach to this, which it's from my iPhone, so the quality's not that great. But Laura, who was amazing, gave me the best quote, which I'm going to let her tell it to her in her own words, what happened at the retreat. And I want you to hear her words about what that retreat meant to her. So have a great day, everybody. And I hope to see anyone who's watching this that wants to go from just surviving to thriving to come to our retreat. And I want the response to be so overwhelming that we get to do this multiple times a year, because to me, this is how we transform and change through breast cancer. Thank you.
Do it.